once you do eventually get into your Inside Rankin account, this is the main page. So when you get into InsideRankin.org, in fact, I'll show it to you like this. When you get into InsideRankin.org, it's going to look like this. All right, yours should look at least similar to this. I may have tabs on here that you may not have. That's not really and truly that big a thing.
I have a secondary solution.
Oh.
These are laptops that are brand new, but we disassemble them and reassemble them.
All right.
So you have to see if they work.
All right.
So I just bought these brand new, but we.
So again, when you get out here to Inside, Rankin, you'll want to go to the Academics tab. And what I want to show you from this is you'll have your class listed in here, but this is where everything that you need for the class is. And I want you to understand that if you haven't looked at it before. It's got my information on it, etc. It's got the book information. So this is all stuff that's gleaned from the syllabus. But the reason I'm showing you this is you may or may not have realized under the handouts, I've literally put about 30 things out there. You don't have to print out any of them. Do you have to open them and look at them? That's up to you. But for example, there's stuff in here. There's another copy of the syllabus. This is about a 25-page document on how to become a web developer. All right, I'm not going to run through these, but notice there's a lot of stuff. There's a bunch of HTML5 things in here. There's a bunch of CSS things in here. There's a bunch of JavaScript things in here. All right, all where it says lectures here, these are all the PowerPoints. I've already done presentations on all of these for you, and they're out on the YouTube channel. All right, but if you, sometimes people like to learn by looking at PowerPoints and whatever, that's in there. So all that material is in there. Now, just so you see, for instance, for like attendance, when I do that, if you notice in here, that's how I do attendance. It comes up, so I put in today, and that Andrew is still not, he's still not here, so I've got to edit that. And for him, he'll be unexcused absence. But notice everyone else is present. All right? And that's one of the things that I'm supposed to do every day. Of course, you don't see that stuff. All right? The course information, that's just information on different instructors. I don't even know what the heck that's supposed to be. The course work is where everything is listed. So this is all the stuff for the course. I've already got all of the assignments out there, and they're opened up and that you can take a look at them. All right? And the tests, all right, are all out there. They're not open to you yet, other than the one for this morning. And these will be all of the rest of the tests. All right? So I've got a whole bunch of stuff out there, and you can see some of it, again, not all of it. And then as you do things, when I go to Gradebook, that's, under Gradebook, that's where all of your information will be put. All right? And then the main page is what I already showed you. The syllabus, again, is there, and when I have to bring things in here. So the reason I wanted to take a second to show you that is you should take a look and learn to iterate your way through that. All right? And if you have any questions, please ask. I think that what we'll do, because I don't want to fall too far behind, is what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I've already got the first test open, but I'm going to go over here to coursework, and we're going to take it as a class. All right? So I'm going to go down to where it says unit, and notice how it says that it's open. All right? And so I'm going to click on it and go to Test Builder and preview this test. So this is what it's going to look like when you take the test for this class. It's going to look like this. So what we'll do is we'll go through these, and I'll let you give me the answers. All right? Or take guesses. How is that? So the first question here is, choose the organization listed below that takes a proactive role in developing recommendations. Which was the one that I talked about with you yesterday that we said kind of runs, all right, the World Wide Web, basically, yes. The W3C. So you would just literally, I'm not going to check there because it records it. Does that make sense? So that's how you're going to take these. I'm going to give you a maximum of an hour to work on these. Most of the time, I would think you're going to get them done in a half an hour. All right? So that, yeah, you would put, it would be D, or the fourth one. Now, we didn't go over much of the hardware stuff, but number 2 there is a network that is geographically dispersed and may use some form of public or commercial communications network is called. Does anybody have an answer for that one, that second one? Again, you may have no hardware knowledge whatsoever. Look at it this way. If the machines in this room are all physically connected together, that represents a local area network. Does that make sense? All right, so there's an actual connection. Now, there's the campus here, there's the campus in St. Louis, and come next fall, they're opening up another campus in Perryville. Those machines and, you know, and all of the stuff that's there, they're linked, but they don't physically have wiring between here and St. Louis. That makes sense, right? They're not going to, you know, dig up the roads and put it in there or whatever. So that would be a WAN. So a wide area network, and that would be the one you choose right there. A wide area network says that there's no physical connection. Does that make sense? All right. Yes, sir. No, you don't have to do it. That's okay. That's okay. All right. Now, you do take one tomorrow on chapter 2. We're going to have to make sure that everybody can take that one. All right? However we do it, we're going to have to make sure that everybody can take one. Okay? All right. Number 3, the first widely used graphical browser was developed by, and this is, for lack of better words, this is almost a trick question because we talked a little bit about ARPA. All right? But really, it was the NSCA that developed that. So you're going to have to read through the chapter and glean stuff out of there. The good news is this first chapter, all right, was historical in nature. It talked to you about terminology and stuff. Most of the other tests that you take are going to say, for example, you might have a question on the test tomorrow that's along the lines of, out of the H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6 headers, which one would be the biggest when you printed it out? You're going to have a lot more questions like that. So if you quickly read through the chapters, but if you do take the time to do the exercises, you should be okay when you take those tests. All right. Number 4, a domain name is a unique text-based internet address corresponding to a unique, and again, you may or may not know that, all right, but it's an IP address. And literally, if you weren't aware of this, literally, if I come in here and I type in inside Rankin.org and I hit enter, all right, the computer doesn't understand that. The computer only understands a series of zeros and ones. Literally, that inside Rankin.org has got to get converted over into an IP address. So it would be something like 338.43.56.12 or something along those lines. You and I, unless you're that good, I can remember Google.com. I couldn't remember an IP address like that. So it goes through a process it uses what's called a domain name server, a DNS, that converts those, the words into numbers for you. All right? So that's what's going on here. Now, the only reason I'm telling you that is depending on the class that you're taking, if you ever have to refer to your own machine, the actual IP address you can use for your own machine. There's 2 ways you can do it. You can type in http://localhost, and that'll refer to your machine, or you can type in 127.0.0.1. Either one of those can be used to refer to your own machine. Now, that's not going to be important for virtually 100% of the stuff we do in here, but for some software packages, you need to be able to refer to your own machine. Because it's possible for you to use your own machine as both a client, so like the browser, and you can use it as though it's like a server machine. And if you don't understand what that means, this is the stuff we're going to be going through as we go on in here, so don't let it throw you. So the answer here would be A, or the first one, IP address. New top-level domains, or TLDs, are coordinated by, and again, like I said, it's ICANN. Okay? You may or may not remember something like that. There aren't very many questions like this. All right? I'm just telling you that right now. The majority of the ones that are in there are more based on these tags, what would you do here? What does this tag mean? That kind of a thing. All right. Number 6, a language using text-based syntax to extend the power of HTML by separating data from presentation is known as, now you may or may not remember that. Anybody got a clue?
Is it XML?
That's correct. The answer is XML. To my knowledge, that doesn't even exist. I don't know what HTML is. So they'll put questions like, or responses like that in there. This, we didn't really go over it, but in the beginning, so to speak, there was a language called SGML, the Standard Generalized Markup Language, that was created. The problem was it was so general and generic in nature, it was never used for anything. But it was the basis from there HTML was formed. All right, so the idea was that with XML, it was going to replace HTML. It hasn't, and it won't. But it's something that's used in unison with HTML. So yeah, that would be the answer. There would have been XML. Number 7, underscore. So you have to pick the one out. Combines the formatting strengths of HTML 4.0 and the data structure and extensibility. And I've already mentioned to you that doesn't exist. So quite often if you get a question like that, they'll put in some kind of a response that just is almost nonsensical. This one, though, is actually XHTML. Okay. Again, with some of the questions that are in here, you really have to read through these. Because you might, I think everyone in here, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, you all know what a URL is. Am I correct in assuming that? You type in inside rankin.org. That's a URL. That's a Uniform Resource Locator. All right. That really is, not only is it a URL, it's also what's called a URI, which is a Uniform Resource Indicator. All right. So really, a URL is a type of URI. All right. So that's the second one that would be chosen here. Maybe you're glad you're not taking this test. I don't know. All right, number 9, the purpose of what protocol is to ensure the integrity of communication. Again, this test is very hardware-based, this particular one, and the answer is TCP. All right. Number 10, this is an important question. All right, and I did mention this yesterday, that this controls has a set of rules as far as how data is sent between computers. And the answer is actually, it's the IP. And again, you don't have to worry about memorizing or remembering any of this stuff. All right? All right. Select the item below that lists the top level domain. So what's the top level domain here? Anybody want to take a guess on that? http://www.yahoo.com. Yes. You're close. Go the other way. It's the .com. All right. Remember those top level domains? That's like .mil, .gov, .net. All right. So basically, some other people refer to that as the extension. Okay. All right, number 12, select the main reason for the initial development of the World Wide Web from the list. Anybody remember what that one was?
Is it the first one? Third one?
No and yes. It's the third one. Remember, it was initially developed as an educational tool. The internet was to be able to take and have papers and things like that shared between different universities. That was actually the beginning of the internet. Number 13, select the true statements from the ones above. Now you have to read them, really read them. .com indicates that it's a computer company. Hopefully none of you think that's not correct, because it's not correct. Number 2, a country code can only be owned by somebody who resides in that country. I did mention to you yesterday that there are people who've got the country code for England and they have companies in America. and vice versa. So that's not correct. So number 3, only nonprofit organizations can purchase a .org domain name. That's not true either. So the correct answer for that would be none of these statements are true. Okay? All right. Number 14. Select the protocols that are used for email processing. You may or may not be familiar with that, and again, this is something I really didn't spend much time on. But the correct answer is the third one, SMTP, POP3, and IMAP. Number 15, what's the set of rules for exchanging text, etc.? This might be the only hardware one that you have to know. Anybody want to take a wild guess as to the answer of that one? What's that? HTTP. Correct. The hypertext transfer protocol. So what happens is if I type in rankin.edu and I hit the enter key, that sends what's called an HTTP or a hypertext transfer protocol request. That goes over to Rankin over the internet, and it gets answered by one of Rankin's servers. And what happens is Rankin's server gives me an HTTP or a hypertext transfer protocol response. So it's a request response. And it sends back the web page to me in HTML so my browser can read it. Number 16, boy, the on-demand use of software, etc., hosted as a remote data center, that really and truly is cloud computing. Number 17, a blank can be configured to house a separate website located at the same name. You may have seen this before. For instance, if, let's say that I own jeffscott.com. I don't, but let's say I did. And from jeffscott.com, you could go to blog.jeffscott.com. That's what they're talking about here. And that's what's referred to as a subdomain. Number 18, a blank is a high-capacity communication link. And again, we didn't talk about this at all. That's what's referred to as a backbone. All right, 19, a blank website. Now, this one you all should know. We talked about this, and I mentioned how this was a really big part of this textbook. Anybody have a guess on that one? Yes, accessible. This book, throughout the book, the author talks about the importance of accessibility. And what you're typically, we're living in a politically correct world. So the way that technically it's supposed to be put is people who are challenged. I kind of like that term because I don't know about you, but personally I think we're all challenged. At something, we're all challenged because no one that I know of knows everything about everything. But when you talk about challenges, most people equate those with some kind of a physical limitation. Someone is blind. Someone is deaf. All right? And then finally, number 20, and again, you should all be able to get this one too. All right? Who invented the World Wide Web? Tim Berners-Lee. And it's interesting because I've heard that name before, but I don't know who Mark Andreessen is. Tim O'Reilly might be the guy who basically is involved with O'Reilly Publishing. Okay? When you get done and after you've answered these, make sure you click that button right there because that's what submits it. So I might have totally turned you off based on this, but I will tell you again that the questions that you'll be asked tomorrow are not like this. They will be multiple choice. There might be a true false here and there, etc. I've pulled out all the ones that were short answer and everything else. It's just too easy to misread those. It also cut down the number of questions that you have on each test. Some tests might have 25 questions, some might have 20. What I'll do is I'll give you a maximum of an hour to work on them. So I'll open it up, and it'll be opened up at 8:05, but you'll have really 55 minutes because we'll start right at the beginning. So it's kind of imperative, if you can, to try to be in here by 8, have your computer set up, be logged on those test days. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. Now, some of you have said that you already have either started the exercises or maybe you've even finished them. But what I'm going to do is before we even go on, I'm going to do two things. First, I want to show you a couple websites. And then after that, I'm going to quickly run through the first exercises with you. So even if you've done them, I'm not going to go through every one. It just would take too long. But we'll hit some of them. All right? And so you can see, because sometimes people say, well, I'm not sure exactly what you were looking for, or that type of thing. So you'll be able to tell. Now, just a couple quick websites, just so you see these. This is kind of a neat website. I'm going to blow this up a little bit so you can see it a little better. And it's called webcodegeeks.com. Like it or not, you are in the transition of becoming a geek. Other people will at least see you that way. Whether or not that's the truth doesn't really matter. Well, that's interesting. It's not changing my font size. There we go. All right, so it's webcodegeeks.com. What's nice about this site, and you don't ever have to go out there, but if you do, what's nice about this site, it looks like this. And notice there's tutorials on a bunch of different stuff, all right? But they've got different sections in here. So there's a section right here, for instance, we're in HTML5 right now. So if you click on the HTML5 link, these are all little mini tutorials, all right? And they go through something and they give you all the code that they use. So again, sometimes people, everybody in here learns in different ways. Some of you may be able to just go through the stuff that's in the book and become unbelievably good at this. Other people will be looking for every single type of extra resource they can find, okay? You can actually go and sign up for an account here too. You can do that, and you got to go over to the home page and do it. And the kind of neat thing is if you do that, they offer you some free books. They call them cookbooks, and they're 50 to 60 page books on HTML or CSS or whatever. All right, so it's a pretty nice site. The next one that's in there, and this is one I use a lot, it's called codeproject.com. And again, as I mentioned to you before, you never have to go through these if you don't want to. But there's codeproject.com. And they've got all sorts of articles that are in there. If you do, you can again register for that. Once and sometimes twice a week, you'll get emails from them that are just filled with articles. They don't ask you your opinion on anything. They don't try to sell you products, etc. All right? But they're just, I want to give you, if nothing else, I want to give you a lot of different resources that you can take advantage of if you decide to do that. All right? Okay, so I'm going to jump right into, let's see, we don't need that. So today, as it said here, yesterday, I think we went through everything, all right? We went over chapter 1, we went over chapter 2, okay? And it said that these things are due at the beginning of class today, and normally that's what's going to happen. Now, I want to ask something, and if the answer is no, please be honest with me, okay? Is there anyone here who doesn't know how to create a folder? Well, that's a good start. All right, so you know how to create a folder and you know how to put files into a folder. That's all correct, right? All right. Do you know how to right mouse click on a folder and basically do a send to and send it to a zip file? Does everybody know how to do that? So again, if you've never done that before, just to be sure, so if I've got a folder right here that's called Newest Word Docs, right there. Hopefully everybody can see that. And don't worry if you can't read it, that's not important. If I right mouse click and choose send to and go down to compress zip folder, okay? So we can all do that. So that what I'm going to ask that you do by the end of the period today, I know it was due at the beginning of class, but by the end of the period, is I want you to have a zip folder that's called chapter 2. And if you remember, my email address is jpscott rankin.edu. I want you to email that to me by the end of class today. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes.
You want to email the exercises from last night?
I want you, the ones from chapter 2. And that's much easier than me having to sit there and walk around to everyone and say, okay, bring this up. Show me what you did for this one. It's going to be much easier to do it that way. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, and if you try doing it, or maybe you don't know how to do this, but you're a little embarrassed to say something, then just talk to me during the break or after class, and I'll be glad to show you. All right? But again, so I'm going to assume for a second here, I'm in this class. All right, and as a student, not as the instructor. So I'm in this class. And I come out here and I've got the book, and again, I'll be able to show you the book from here, and that's how I'm going to do it. So we're into chapter 2. And again, as mentioned in chapter 2, that's where we started to get the exercises. All right, so there's our first hands-on practice. The reason I asked if you knew how to create a folder is that's what they tell you to do here. All right? So for 2.1, all they wanted you to do was to create, it says to create a new folder with Windows, version 7 and above. All right? So they wanted you to do that, and then they wanted you to key this in. So again, I would have expected that you right mouse click here, choose new, folder. I think they wanted you to call it chapter 2. Okay? So that's the first part. Now, at least one of you in here talked to me before class today, and what you said is fine. There are many different editors that you can use, okay? I want to show you one that I like because I think it's really simple, all right? And I'm actually going to show you something else with it. But what I'd like you to do, if you would please, and if you don't want to download this, then don't. You can use Notepad. If you've got your heart set on Notepad, then use it. You may or may not know, but I'm going to take for granted that you all at least know what Notepad is. It's about the cheapest, most boiled down editor there is. But you may or may not know not only is there Notepad, but there's Notepad++, which is Notepad with 2 plus signs. That's kind of like Notepad on steroids. It's a better editor. It's free. You can go out to notepadplus.org. And I don't know if it's with 2 pluses or the word plus. It doesn't matter, and you can download that. But there's another thing that's out here that's called brackets that you may or may not have seen. And if you go out to brackets.io, that's the main or the home page for it. All right, so that's where it is. You just have to type in brackets.io. And if you type that in, and you hit enter, it brings you out to the brackets homepage. All right? And I've already got it on my machine, so I'm not going to download it again. But see the big button that's right there? It just says download brackets 1.7. Okay? Now, I would suggest you do that. Again, if you've got your heart set on another editor, again, I don't want to take anything for granted in here. So I want you all to understand this, and I said it yesterday too. Don't use Word as your editor. All right, Word is a word processing package, Microsoft Word. You can't use it in here because Word puts all sorts of codes and other stuff in your document that won't work with HTML. All right, and just so you see it, this is your interface. That's what Notepad++ looks like. All right, right there. So you see you get some color coding, etc. Plus I can take this page and I can click run and I can tell it what browser I want it to run in. So again, if you do want to use Notepad++, you can do that too. All right. But going back to where we just were, if you go and download brackets.org, I want to show you what a document looks like in brackets. All right? So I'm going to grab this index.html that's right here. I'm going to right mouse click on it and choose open with brackets. Now, if you do this, it looks like this. Not real pretty, but highly functional, for lack of better words. All right? There are a couple different themes. This is I think the light theme. There's a dark theme too, so if you'd rather have a black background with lighter letters, you can do that one too. All right? And don't worry about changing that because I want to show you something with that a little bit later. But again, you can do whatever you want in here, and they've even got features, some functionality. So if I click edit right here, I can click beautify. And what's nice about that is if I click beautify, I don't know if you saw it or not, but it lined everything up. And I don't have to worry about things looking nice. Now, when you do that and you beautify it, you're beautifying it for this software package. So if I open this up right now in Notepad++, it might look a little jumbled. Just like if I did it in Notepad++ and then open it up in here, it would look a little bit jumbled. All right. And in this one, if you look on the side here, hopefully you can all see this. It almost looks like a little lightning bolt or something. If I click on that, that'll actually run it for me. All right. Now, don't worry about that. That's just something that I created a while back. Okay. I want to show you one more thing. And I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. Sorry about that. All right. There is a website out there that you don't have to go to, but you might want to. It's called Udemy.com. And literally what they have are software. They sell software courses. Now, when I say they sell, some of them are free. Okay? But if you don't even need the courses out there. In fact, if you just type in udemy.com, it'll bring you here. Okay? But the reason I'm showing you this under udemy.com is, can everybody see up here where it says search for courses? I'm going to click in there and I'm going to type brackets free. And if you notice, the second one that's in here says learn brackets, the open source text editor, and it's free. Now, if you do this, they may make you sign up for an account. It doesn't cost anything. And the only time they send you email is if they want you to try to sign up for some of their courses. Okay? But I actually went through this. It's got I think it was about 16 lessons in it, something like that. And you go, well, that's pretty much. Most of the lessons are 5 to 10 minutes long each. So you literally could do this in an afternoon if you wanted to. You don't have to do it. All right? And it's very similar to the way that I do things. Notice there's some stuff in here that you can download, etc. If I go to Introduction Summary. All right, no, that's a PDF. So I want to go and actually have you hear him.
In this video, we will install brackets onto our machine. Now in this demonstration, I'm using a PC.
All right. It's coming out of a different speaker, and I can't figure out which one, but you would hear him talking. So these are just, for lack of better words, little mini lessons. So let's say you start going through that, and you're like, okay, I understand what he's saying, etc., but I don't want to watch all these lessons. I don't have the time to do that. Okay? I have a question for you, and not to embarrass anyone, but please raise your hand. How many of you checked your email yesterday, your Rankin email, and saw that you got an email from me? Okay, at least a couple of you did. All right? Because what I sent you yesterday was this. Okay? And this had what we just looked at. That's the URL for that brackets course. It's also got a brackets cheat sheet on it, so if you want to teach yourself that way. It's also got the W3 school site URL. It's got the Java 2S that we looked at the end of the class, the Quacket, and the Tyzek. So I just put those in there, and as it says, it's some helpful URLs. All right? Then I took the actual cheat sheet itself and saved it to a Word file. So you've got that. So that's something you may want to consider if you're going to use brackets, and you're having a hard time remembering different things, all right, you might want to print that out. You don't have to. All right? Okay. And you've got the code now. We're going to start looking at this in a bit. This was that first website. I found an even more kind of dumbed down one, for lack of better words. We're going to start working on that in a bit. All right? And you also have this. This is the first one that they have you build at the end of chapter 2 for that. Remember I showed you yesterday that's called Path of Light Yoga Studio? The first one that you're supposed to create is right there. All right? So what I'm going to do with you is this. All right? For the rest of the class period today, I'm going to right now walk you through. I'm going to give you time, so if for some reason you didn't do those exercises for chapter 2, you'll have time. But between now, we'll take a break at in about 15 minutes we'll take a 10-minute break, okay? But after that, I want to go through the beginning of creating the website that I showed you. Well, I thought I had it open, but I must have closed it. This first website. So you already have it, but we're going to start creating it as a class. Because again, to me, the faster I get you using the computer and doing this stuff, the better you're going to be. The other advantage of that too, and again, going along with using your own machine, you get a comfort level with your own machine. All right? It's funny because the machine that I had at the college I used to be at, for some reason, they just never rotated in a new one. And mine was about 5 years old, which is really old for the software and stuff that I had on it. All right? But I knew exactly what it did and what it didn't do. I knew when it updated. I knew everything about it. I was really comfortable with it. This machine is a lot different, the one I'm using, than the machine that I had previously. So I'm still getting used to it. All right? So what I'd like everyone to do, all right, so we're going to start on this right now as a class, is I'd like you to go and you can do it on your desktop. It really and truly doesn't matter all that much, but let me get rid of this stuff that I've got over here. I'll just throw it into, I got a miscellaneous someplace. There we go. All right, so on your desktop, I'd like you to right mouse click, choose new, and add a new folder. All right? And we're going to just, because it's my first website, we'll just call this MFW. So that'll be our first, okay? So again, the idea is by the end of the period today, we want to start to be able to create that website that I showed you. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. Now, I'm going to create this in brackets. If you decide you want to use a different editor, you can. And I do want to mention to you that as far as that goes, just so you see it, there's Notepad++, and it's under Notepad -++. And again, if you go there, there's the download button. There are other editors as well. And it's funny because for years, I've used Notepad++ in the classroom. And a lot of my students have kind of laughed at me and said, wow, you really ought to be using brackets. It's a lot better and easier to use. I'm like, well, I'm comfortable with Notepad++. Okay, but I went through that class. I did it in 2 days, the one that was online that I showed you. And since then, all I've been using has been brackets. All right, but either one will work. Again, there are even other editors. And if you really have your heart set on just using regular old-fashioned Notepad, you can even do that too. All right? So, in brackets right here, so I'm going to open up brackets. There's brackets right there. And your beginning screen is going to look like, I keep getting that, and I don't know what that's from, but all right. So I want to do a file, new, which is going to let me start creating a brand new file. It should make sense, right? Now, I'm going to recommend that when you do this, again, this is my recommendation. I can't watch you. I don't want to play cop, but it's always the best idea that as soon as you start to create a new file, you immediately save it. Because you're telling the system where you want to save it to and what you want to call it. All right? So I'm immediately going to save this, so I'm going to say File, and I'm going to do a Save As. And as you can guess, I want to then iterate my way over to my desktop, and we've got that new folder we just created called MFW. So I'm telling it that's where I want it to save. Make sense? All right. Now remember, we talked about this before. I can type in now index.html, and I can hit enter. And it should work okay on this editor. All right? But sometimes it'll save it as index.html.txt. So I always take my file name and put it within double quotes. So index.html. So I've got here double quote index period HTML double quote. All right. And again, can I make that so it's a little easier to see? I don't know. All right. It looks like when I'm in here it's not, today at least, it's not letting me change the resolution. So we got to work with that crummy resolution for right now. All right. So I want to click Save. If there's any kind of an error, you're going to get the error message right there too. Okay? Anyone have any problem doing that? Again, we saved that under MFW for my first website, okay? And we saved it as index.html. All right. Now, one of the things that we're encouraged to do at Rankin is to constantly be questioning you. So I could go through every line here and say, okay, what line do I put in first? Okay, and we could do that. But the problem is, we've got a bit to type in here, and we'd never get it done. So I'm going to do some typing, and what I'm going to expect is if there's something that you don't understand or something you don't think I've gone through, you're going to ask. All right, I've got to make that assumption. And I've also got to assume then that if you don't ask, that the stuff I'm putting in here, you do understand. All right, so again, you may or may not remember, but the first thing we put in is our doc type statement. Now, does that show well enough that everybody can read that? I would suggest that if you're back on the end and if you can't see it, that you move closer. All right? I'm trying something, and I know Charles isn't going to like this, but I'm looking at it that we have a small enough group. I'm supposed to have a seating chart. And I'm supposed to make, so, oh my gosh, we didn't have seating charts since 5th grade. Yeah, but they want that here. But I'm trying to buck the trend. All right, I like it where you start to get comfortable sitting where you want to sit. Okay? And unless they force me to do that, I'm not going to do that. But if they do force me, then one day when you come in here, that's what'll happen. All right, and typically the reason they do that, why would they even do that, is they not only give you seating charts, but usually about every 2 to 4 weeks they change them. So you get to know the other people that are in here. All right, that's the idea. In many ways, the 10 of you are in here, you get forced upon one another. All right? Some of you are going to be stronger students than others. Everybody in here can get this. Some of you, it'll probably take longer. And what I found too is with some of my best students historically in classes, they tend to sit off by themselves because they love to do what they do, but a lot of them, they don't like to talk to anybody. It's like if somebody comes up and approaches them and says, hey, would you give me some help on this assignment? They'll do it. But they don't walk around and ask people, hey, how are you doing on the assignment? Do you need some help? Because they think that's what the instructor's for. And really, they're right when you think about it. All right? So we're going to do this, and I'm going to try to teach you what I consider to be the best way of writing this stuff from the start. So some of the stuff that we're going to end up putting in here, all right, you don't have to worry about, well, why'd you do this? Why? Because we're going to get to it in later chapters. All right? But I mean, I hate that. I don't know about you, and I don't know if you remember this, but it was like 2nd or 3rd grade. I still remember it. That's how it affected me. Or 4th grade, I don't know. But remember when you learned long division? Anybody remember that? Then you got done after you learned it, and then they taught you short division. I was a little punk kid, but I remember thinking, why the hell did you teach me long division when I'm never going to use it now? And I actually asked, not with word hell, because if the teacher I had in 4th grade used to teach in a Catholic school, so she would have hit me. But and she did hit people, even though it was public school. All right. But I asked her why, and she said because it gave you the basis, it gave you the foundation. And I understood that. I mean, I was actually okay with that. But all we're going to do is add some stuff that we may or may not have talked about yet. So if you remember, the first thing we want to do, now please take a look. Notice I'm putting in HTML here, if you all look on the screen. Now watch, as soon as I close this. That's why some people like this type of editor. It immediately puts closing tags in there for you. See, I didn't put the closing one in. It was put in there for me. I just put in HTML. All right? There probably is a way that you can turn that off, because if that irritates you, and you want to do it yourself for whatever reason, and maybe you do. All right? Now, you may or may not remember, but we also said inside of our HTML tag, we were going to put in lang equal en. I asked that yesterday, and one of you responded, that's probably English, which it is. So what we have in here, this is not a tag. This is not HTML, this doc type. That's put in there because by the end of class today, you're going to go out to a website and you're going to do what's called validate your HTML. And the doc type lets it know that when you're validating it, it's HTML5 that you're using. That's what that's used for. All right? And all the HTML that we create is going to be between HTML tags. So we're starting that right now. And we're saying that in our HTML tag, the language we're using is English. All right? All right. So then we got to put some stuff in here. And again, you may or may not remember this. But the next thing that comes in here, the next thing that comes in here is our head tag. All right, and in the head tag is all that stuff that appears that will not appear on the web page itself. It will not appear on the page itself. We could call this whatever we wanted to, but let's just call it what it is. So we're going to put a title in here, and we'll call it My First Website. Okay? Because that's what it is. Now, I'm going to save. I like to save often, so I'm just going to click save. And you don't have to, you don't have to do this, but if you look, I'm running this, and you go, there's nothing there. No, there's our My First Website. That's what we put in there for the title tag. All right? And if you think, well, I get it, but we're really going slow. Yeah, because I don't want to have to do this every time. I figure if we do this once as a class, that ideally at least, it'll make some sense to you. All right? If I'm going too fast, you're going to have to stop me. And if you think, well, no, you're not. You're going way too slow. Remember, not everybody probably feels the way that you feel. All right? So that's the thing we're going to put in there. And we'll put in one more thing. We'll put in a meta tag. Whoops. So I'm going to put in here, meta. All right. And notice when we put in the meta tag here, all right, you may or may not notice, it didn't put in an ending tag. And it didn't put in an ending tag because they don't have an ending tag for a meta tag. So I'm going to put in here charset equals UTF-8. And another thing you may or may not have noticed, I put in the beginning double quote. It put an ending one in there for me. Okay? So this says, again, that I'm going to be using Unicode. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. We're using the Unicode character set. Now, I'm not going to run it again, but if I did, it would look exactly the same as it did before. We haven't put anything else in there yet. All right, so all you'd see would be the stuff that's in that tag. Now, you may or may not remember, but the magic, so to speak, all occurs between our body tags. All right, so everything that's in there for those body tags, everything that goes in between there, that's all stuff that's going to appear on the web page. All right? So, may or may not remember yesterday, but one of the things I mentioned towards the end of chapter 2, I used the word div, and I said that a div is a division. Again, you may or may not remember that. All right? But we're going to put this stuff into a div. We're going to just create the first page of this. And although you might think, yeah, you're going really, really slow, believe it or not, all right, we're going to be done with this probably in about a half an hour or so, even getting a break in there. Because a lot of the stuff that we put in, we're just going to grab some text from the internet and throw it in there. So the only thing we have to be concerned with are our tags. Okay, so I'm going to put one of these div tags in here. And I'm going to put this in, ID equals wrapper. All right? And if you say, what does that mean? The stuff talking about IDs and the like, that's all in the next chapter. But I want to show it to you now. All right? I figured if, even though we're in chapter 2, if I show you some concepts from chapter 3, then once we get into chapter 3, it'll make them easier for you to understand. All right? So I'm going to put in here a lot of different stuff, but I'm going to start here. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put in about 5 or 6 lines, then we're taking a break. Okay? So I'm going to put in a header tag, not an header tag, a header tag. Okay? And I'm going to put in here one of those H1s, and it's going to say, my first website. You say, that's what you put in your title. Yeah, but it's different. Okay? Now, please look up on the screen here and just stop typing for a second and just look up on the screen. Let's see how it's changed. And I bet you it's because I didn't save. So that's on me. File. Save all. See that? Now there's something there because we put it in the body section. Since it's in the body section, it'll appear on the web page itself. All right? So I'll tell you what, it is 9:01. Why don't you take 10 minutes, and while you're gone, I'm going to type in 5 or 6 more lines, because that's the next stuff that we're going to put in here. All right? So come back in about 10 minutes, if you would, please. Does everybody know now where the facilities are if you got to use the bathroom? Again, there's one up here and one down directly below it. And if you go to the one that's down below on the first floor and you go the other, instead of making a right to go into the restrooms, you make a left. That's where the little cafeteria is. Okay? All right. So again, we'll start up in about 10 minutes.
When I press live preview, nothing comes up.
Just an empty page or what? It says waiting. It looks like it. try to refresh it and see what happens. Well, let's do this. Go back into brackets. All right, don't even worry about that. Just click OK. Yeah, everything looks like it's okay. Do a file, save as. Okay, you should use lowercase. That's okay. Get rid of that. Don't change anything. That's fine. That's fine. Just say replace it. All right. Try clicking the one preview. Yeah, it sure doesn't work then. Unable to load the preview page for more information. Now, did you download it onto your machine? Okay.
Yes.
Huh. I've not seen that before. Preview connection errors. Stolen brackets not launching. Project should be working set. All that stuff that they're talking about there, you've got though. Looks like the path is okay. Yeah, I've never seen it before. It says unable to load it. Now, normally when that's the case, the first thing I look at is if there's something wrong with, it's saved, okay, it's there. Well, this is wrong, but this is where you're right there. You type in my first website, but I'm trying to figure out why it's not displaying. This is the one that comes with the system. It's like a practice page.
Right.
So does that one show, or did you try that one?
That one did you try?
It's canceled. I've never seen that before.
The computer's just reload.
I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's do this, just so we've got something in here, okay? I'll close this. First of all, let's just open it in a browser and see if indeed it opens okay.
Okay.
There's my first website. Remember, you didn't type in my first website here, so it is opening. So it is not an invalid page. So the problem is in brackets. All right. So let's, for now, just so you've got something that you can use, let's go out here. Let's try Notepad plus plus. Okay, if we download them? Okay. It's a small package, and it really, literally should just take a matter of seconds. It's already done, so that's good. Comes with it. Now, if we right mouse click on it, you can open it with hopefully one of the ones it's gonna show in there. There you go, that would look good, plus plus. So your ears will look a little different. If you want it to be bigger, a bigger font, I'll give you an arrow keys if I remember how to do it on a system like this, control. Now, there's a way to make the font bigger. But the point is, now what you'll do is you'll type the stuff in, and when you wanna run it, just click the run button there, and launch your Chrome. Okay, and what I'd suggest is, at the end of the period, it could be the machine, depending on how old it is, but I would uninstall brackets and then reinstall it. Somehow maybe it got corrupted when you did the install, I don't know. Sir.
I'm having trouble.
Okay.
I
Give,
don't think I can download brackets.
oh, okay. All right, then what we'll do is we'll do the same thing we did for Amin. We'll put Notepad++ on your machine. Just give me about 30 seconds and I'll be over there. We'll leave it like this for now. File, save all. All right, if you look up on your screen, once you put in what I've added here, this is what your screen is going to look like. Not very much, all right? You're like, wow, I paid money to do this. Yeah, it'll get better, all right? So, all right, I'll leave that in there, right there. I'll tell you what, just close that window up if you would. And we'll open up, open up a new tab. And go on to Notepad. Plus, you may or may not realize it, but what we have in here is we started to use some of these HTML5 tags. All right, I'm going to stop my tape and start it again because if it goes much more than an hour, I have a hard time producing it. So this is going to disappear for about 30 seconds while I save this and start to produce it, and then I'll bring it right back up. So it's not going anywhere. Yeah, that's pretty